Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Kyle Loriano, and I was saved by Jesus. I wasn't always a Christian, and I want to share my testimony because I come from a different background. I think my story is unique. It's different than what I've heard from other people, and I think God's been placing it upon my heart to share it. So I want to do that. This will be a little bit longer format. I'm going to do my best to edit it out. But regardless, I just want to start from the beginning. You know, I grew up as a Roman Catholic my whole life. Both my parents were raised Roman Catholic. I did all the sacraments. I did, the communion. I did the confirmation. I did all these things in the church. And I didn't really have a good understanding about what it was that I was doing. I went to CCD class. All I remember is just, hey, Noah had an ark, had a whole bunch of animals going 2 by 2, and we would draw it or color it, and they would ask us questions, and then we would just regurgitate information. We wouldn't know any better. I mean, I certainly didn't even know what a God even was. I just knew all of a sudden there was this big God, and this God in the sky or in space somewhere is going to go ahead and help us out if there's another flood. That's literally what I thought as a kid. I had no understanding about what is sin. I had no understanding about what it means to have a God even. So when I went through my CCD courses and when I did all the sacraments and all these things, one of the things I could never get past as a kid was the aspect of going to a priest. I just could not fathom talking to a guy in this cube, and he's going to put a veil up, and then he's going to forgive me of all these sins. And I'm thinking to myself, why would I want to even tell him these things? Nevertheless, express them. So here I am as a young adult, if you will, or maybe a preteen, and I'm having to do confirmation, and I'm having to do all this crazy stuff, and I'm sitting there, and everybody's just falling asleep in this church. Nobody really cares that this priest is even talking about or what the message is. All I know is I'm listening to some homily, getting excited for about 5 minutes because he's talking about something other than what God is saying, and he's just talking from his own heart or whatever he has written down. And I'm getting to connect with it. Then all of a sudden he goes back to these same things, whether it's the songs, which will, just put me to sleep, and nothing could really happen to get me excited to go. And I remember so many times I would just tell my mom, like, hey, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it today. I'm sick. I got a headache. I would do all these things. I remember one time I was sick. I think I even did this with school. I would put the thermometer up by the light, and we had those incandescent light bulbs. I would just warm it up, then stick it back under my tongue, and it worked like a charm. Sorry, Mom, but I did a lot of those things, and I think she probably knew about it anyway. They didn't really want to go either. So that kind of was my upbringing, my foundation. So I thought I was a good guy. I was a nice kid, for most of my childhood. I wasn't really rambunctious. I was good to my parents. My parents were good, they always have their misgivings, just like any other people. We're all fallen. So, standard upbringing. I was an only child, so I didn't really have any siblings that I can really bounce things off of or get to know. So I was kind of on my own path, just getting close to both of my parents, and I would learn from them and what they've done in their life, and I would mimic that in order to, emulate them. Because when you're a child, you look to your parents as your heroes, really, as the only real factors in your life that matter. And as I kind of go through life, things just happen, normal adolescent things. You start getting introduced to things, especially being in public school. You get introduced to things pretty quick. You get introduced to cursing when you're in, first, second grade. You're already, seeing people getting fist fights. Seeing people getting, doing drugs and all that stuff at a very young age. I mean, my first time even seeing people do those things on a regular basis was right in middle school, which I think everybody really has, especially being a 90s kid. It's just kind of the norm, especially in public school. You just kind of get into that scene. You're just thinking that that's just a part of life and that, ultimately we're all going to have to go through it. And so, basically going through my teenage years, I started to get a little bit more rebellious. I had, a lot of different types of friends, and when we got into trouble, we got into trouble. We did drugs, we partied, we had a good time, and I just thought, okay, I'm just living life. Then all of a sudden, I start to, I guess, peak, if you will, out of high school and going into college, and that was a whole different story. I mean, you kind of go from a whole aspect of life where you're just trying to be a good kid, then all of a sudden you're acting a little bad and you're kind of going down the wrong path, to all of a sudden you go into college, you're on your own. And now that I'm on my own, I'm living life. I'm free. I'm free from the entanglement of any direction in life. I'm free from, having anybody controlling me. And I love that freedom. I loved it. And I abused it and I used it for sure. I would get with any kind of ladies that I could. I would constantly be going to different parties. I would constantly be getting into different drugs and different alcohol. I would constantly be, always looking for a good time, a good high, a good everything. And it led me down a path of destruction that I never knew that I even had. So kind of going through my life and looking back on it, especially during the time when I was in college, it was really the silver lining of what kind of led me down the paths that led me down in the future. So needless to say, I found my now wife in college as well. And when we were dating, we were both came from the Roman Catholic background. So, we were just thinking, oh, it's frowned upon if we're getting to know each other before marriage, right? And ultimately, what happened was we started dating, which led to us living together, and ultimately just led us down a path where we were in full rebellion to God, and we just didn't know. And so my wife, being of Eastern European descent, Roman Catholicism looks a little different there. Very different than American Roman Catholicism. Roman Catholicism in America is just basically you go to church and you just get the little wafer, that cracker, you slock that thing back and you keep moving. And then you just go out the door. You're like, peace, see ya. And, when I was dating her at the time, boy, it's different. Especially when you go to a mass that's not in English. It's even worse. You start sitting there and you start thinking about every single thought that you can imagine. How can I improve in life? How can I get out of this? What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? You're not even thinking about God. You don't even know who God is. I'm looking at this cross with this person on it. I'm like, who is that really? Is that real? Is that just some image? Like, what am I looking at? But we ended up going somewhere a little different. We went to a shrine. And with shrines, it's a little different because when I was raised in Roman Catholicism, it was always about the Father and Son and the Holy Spirit, and that Jesus is on the cross, and that there's Mary, and then there's just God the Father. But when you're in a more of a Eastern European Roman Catholicism, there's more Mary than Jesus. And so when I'm going to the shrine with my wife at this point, because we're trying to become a little bit more religious, if you will, we're going through the motions because we're going to be ramping up. We're now we're engaged, and we're going to, start to actually be a husband and wife. And so we want to do those things that everybody says to do, go to church. So I start forcing myself to go to church with her, and begrudgingly, of course. And when we're going through there, I'm starting to see that there's this Mary picture, which is the 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 Black Madonna is what it is, at least in the Polish culture. But the Black Madonna is essentially a representation of Mary with baby Jesus. And you can always look that up, or I may put an image in or something. But it's a little creepy, when I was first looking at it. And I'm looking at this image, and it really is. It's just a black woman with a black child in this photo. And I'm confused because Roman Catholicism in American world, it's all about this white Jesus. And so you're just used to seeing that. Then all of a sudden you see this Black Madonna, and my whole world's flipped because I'm like, wait, is this even real? Like, what is this? And then it started to lead me down a path of thinking, like, why am I doing this? And when that started to creep into my mind, I was seeing that there was a lot more changes in my life that were kind of coming up to the surface that I just thought were me. And those would just be, I thought my traits, which was a little bit more snappy, a little bit more angry, looking into lustful things, having these open doors that I just thought every guy went through, to be honest. And I just thought I was just another guy like anybody else, and that this was no big deal. And so I'm going through life at this point, me and my fiance at the time. And then we get married in that same shrine, and we do everything that's needed. We go through the Catholic coursework. I don't even know what it's called anymore, but we do that where it's the marriage counseling. And we talk to this priest, and he's so bitter and angry. And I was thinking to myself, this is not even enjoyable because he has so much hate for us. Like, why am I even doing this? But we had to get that, to do the check marks, if you will, for the religion. And so we're going through and we're doing that stuff, and we get that completed, and then we get married. And once we get married, we have a typical wedding, and we start our life. And so when we're starting our life, I'm starting to think like, man, this is not as fun as I would like it to be. And I started having these thoughts of, well, what if this is all a lie? Like, what if this is not true? And so I start really kind of considering that maybe what I'm going through is not the truth. And I started to be on a truth quest at this point. And so I went through a lot of different things, different channels at that point. I think it was around just prior to 2020. I think it was like 2019. And we were just starting to see the aspects of potentially COVID coming through the mix, because COVID happened in 2020. And before that happened, there was all this truth that was being revealed, a lot of these things that kind of came up to the surface. And I started to question things. I started to question a lot of things, to be honest. And when I started to question things, it started to get a little bit more muddy. My thoughts of God, my thoughts of religion, my thoughts of any of this stuff. All I knew is I just wanted to get out of it. I wanted to stop going to this thing, and I wanted to just enjoy my Sundays in peace, So fast forward a little bit, I'm still going through the motions, and we were expecting our first child. So we expect our first child, and during that time, there was a transitioning point in my life, because in my youth, I've practiced a lot of yoga, meditation work, breath work, that kind of stuff. And New Age started to become really popular. And at that point, that kind of drew me in, because I wasn't really concerned about this whole God on a cross. I was more concerned about how my vibrational frequency would be, and if I would be ascending to a higher consciousness. Kind of like what's out there nowadays where you're an ascended master and all that. That's kind of the direction I went into. So at one point, I was dabbling pretty hard in New Age, where I actually went so deep as to get rocks. And these rocks are crystals. You would actually charge them up. So you would put them out in sun. You would hold them. You would obtain their frequencies. And based upon their frequencies, you would have different moods or perceptions, or different things would manifest. And so I was getting these rocks and I was holding them all day. All day. I would have them in my pockets. I would make sure I had them everywhere. I had beads that wrapped around my wrist. That's how serious I was. And when I would go through life that whole time, that was during COVID. I was working remotely because COVID had then struck. My wife's pregnant and we're expecting our first child. Going through a lot of changes in life and I'm freaking out. And I don't know how to deal with it. And so I'm getting these rocks because it's a coping mechanism for me to find peace. First time I was ever really tasked with finding peace. Before that, I was, a young adult and I was just living carefree, living for myself. But now here I am, age 27, face the reality that I'm going to be a dad. And that kind of freaked me out a little bit. And so here I am with these rocks and I'm using their vibrational energy in order to feel cleansed. And nothing was, it would work. It would work. Don't get me wrong. It worked. Like I would feel good and I would put them on or whatever. I would feel good. But then I noticed that my behavior started to change and kind of snappy again, like snappy, a little bit angry sometimes. I would be sometimes a little bit more cold, standoffish. And I just thought it was my personality, honestly. I just thought it was me the whole time. I said, well, that's just who I am. So my wife would get angry. We would have fights. We would get snappy. I just say, no, you need to accept me. It's just me. I can't change. That this is who I am. This is who you married. And, when we would go through at this point in time in our life, I started dabbling pretty heavy into that new age. And so I would start watching literally tarot cards on YouTube. I'd be watching them all the time. I'd be reading my astrology all the time. I'd be looking at star signs all the time. I was so deep that I was thinking that there was literally space stations on Mars, space stations on the moon. I was thinking that all this crazy stuff, that these aliens were actually going to be coming to this earth as a brethren, as an ascended master, if you will, and that we were going to be basically our cosmic brothers and sisters helping us. And so I got sucked into this world so deeply, and I only got sucked into it so much more so because at that point where all this stuff was happening, my life was starting to fall apart, at least for myself. And that's because I lost my job and I couldn't find a job for a good 8 months. And so during that time, I felt like a failure because now my wife is pregnant. We're expecting our firstborn and I have nothing prepared. And she's the breadwinner. She's the one making the income, not me. She's the one that's going out there working and not me. And so she's doing the long night shift hours as a nurse. And I'm sitting at home playing video games, trying to figure out how I could do this, sending my resume every which way. Nothing would work. Nothing at all. I tried for months and months. And it wasn't for a lack of effort, and it wasn't for a lack of materials on my resume. I had a decent resume at that time for being in sales. You can bring in from some pretty bad places and some good places, and I was in good places. And for some reason, nothing was sticking, right? And so during this time, I leaned heavy into the new age. We would start doing astral projections. I would start channeling that in to my mind before I go to bed, where I was trying to raise my vibration and in order to split myself so I could start astral projecting. And I knew if I can astral project, I could do fun things, whether that's going to be visiting some people that I knew in the past or visiting some people that I know now and I can tickle their feet or something crazy. But I was never able to do so. I was never successful. But then one time I was doing it at night and I had a name that populated. It was like Bozaz or Bozard or something like that. And I was like, wow, like, that's weird. Is that like an angel? And so I'm looking this name up. I can't find anything on it. It's like BZORD or something like that. ORK or something. And telling my wife about it. I'm like, this is crazy. But meanwhile, at the same time this is all happening, my wife is having constant nightmare dreams. Nightmare about being in the Holocaust. Nightmare about dying. Nightmares where she would be sitting up speaking to me, because we lived in a loft where I would work upstairs and she would be in the bedroom sleeping down below me during the daytime when I was working or trying to find work. And so she would be literally talking to me and just waking up or screaming or something like that. And I found it a bit odd. I just thought, okay, maybe that's just her personality, or that's just how she's wired. So nothing was really working with this new age. And I was getting a little bit more frustrated at myself and feeling down and feeling inadequate as a man, as a provider, as somebody who can support this family. I was feeling like my back was against the wall and I had nobody there to help support me, because my wife and I were having more fights. We were not being able to be reconciled together because she was upset. I was upset. We were upset of two different things, but also at the same thing. And we just couldn't get along. It was a really rocky part where I was like, wow, I can see why divorce makes sense. I can see how that happens. Coming from a family where my dad was divorced multiple times, I just thought, okay, like, it is what it is. If that's the case, that's the case. Like, we'll just roll this into the next one. But I didn't want to do that because I had a child on the way, and I just felt like there's more at stake here than just me. So I'm going through this part in life where now, over my wife's womb, we're starting to do the crystals with the pendulum swings. So we're taking necklaces and we're putting the rock on there, and we're having the rock tell me if it's a boy or a girl. And it told me it was a girl. Sure enough, it was a girl. So that's a form of witchcraft that I didn't know about, but I was dabbling into that pretty heavy. And as I'm going through this part in life, one day I still had the rock bracelet went missing one day. Now I panicked because I wore it religiously every day. Every day I wore it. And first time around, I found it. Put it back on. It was broken. I fixed it. Then magically, it's gone again. Disappeared. Never found it. It was gone. Absolutely gone. And I was quite irate with it because that was my ability to be healed. I could be healed through this. So this was my ability to cope. And then it's now gone. This rock on my wrist is gone. And I'm feeling this type of way. And I had no idea why. I just knew I needed it. And so I had this dependency upon these rocks. And that's when I got frustrated at it, because I said, well, this isn't working. I lost it. And even at that time, I got my wife these earrings made of these crystals so that she can feel grounded or whatever. And it helped. It helped her for that time. But things just got worse and worse. The attacks that my wife had became more severe, where she would be sleepwalking. She'd be walking into places. She'd be screaming out of bed. She'd be literally just scaring me sometimes. And it came to a point where I said, okay, maybe this is not it. Maybe this is not what I need to be doing, because I've tried the astral projection. That didn't work. I've tried the yoga meditation, that breath work. That didn't work. I've tried to raise my frequency, my vibrations. I can't do it. I've tried all these different things and I couldn't open the door enough to let that ability come through. And so I start on this journey of really taking church seriously again. So I go back with my wife to the Roman Catholic Church. We've always been going this whole time, but now I'm much more serious. Now I'm looking forward to going. Now I'm actually attending and listening and trying to figure out what I need to do to become better as a dad, as a potential dad, and better as a husband, better as everything. And I noticed that things were improving. I was having certain fruits produced from it. I was feeling better. I was feeling more complete. I was feeling wholesome. But I still felt empty inside. Everything around me was getting a little better, but it wasn't completely better. My wife was still having attacks, and we were still going through it with our child. My wife was severely sick. She had that hyperemesis. So, ladies, you probably have heard about that. If you've been through it, I'm sorry, and it's definitely challenging. But during that time, we got our first child, and she came into the world, and it was great. And we lived in this little abode, and it was a blessed time. And just before, I'm going to take a pause here, because just before she arrived, we had a couple of different spiritual encounters that I think would be interesting to talk about. So before our child was born, we had an encounter where there was a woman who lived in our apartment, and then she died, and we knew about it. And then we moved in. The next people to move in were us. And while we were there, my wife would see her in the corner of her eye, sitting like in the side of the room, in the corner of the room, or she would see lights, and she'd be scaring me half to bits in the morning, waking up. She's there in the room. Oh, I see something. I see this old woman. I see this. I see that. Freaking me out. Then at one point, I'm by myself. This is when we're in a fiance. And when I was by myself in this apartment, I knew I was researching a lot, and we got sage sticks, and we saged this whole house, going crazy with it, saging everything up. We're putting the letters on the door, for priests. We're putting all that stuff on there. We're doing everything we can. I got holy water. I'm literally spritzing it throughout the house. And then at one point, I feel this presence, like over me or around me. And I literally said, you don't belong here, and you're going to go back to where you came from. You're going to go out. You are not welcomed here anymore. I literally said that. And then the very next minute, I should say, I took covers, blankets, and I put them on every mirror that was freestanding in the home. I put them on everyone and left them on there for like a week because I was so freaked out. And never saw anything. But it was that feeling that it's all I really needed. Then ever since that moment, I never had that spirit wasn't there anymore. And so I tell that backstory because it shows a brighter story in the future. But now fast forward. We have our first child. We're in a different house now. Different location. Different townhouse, not an apartment. And we're still practicing the same things. So we're going through and we're essentially doing Roman Catholicism in full swing. We got my child baptized. We got her going through every single thing that we needed to be good Roman Catholics on paper. And through that, we weren't getting any better in life. At this point, I found a job through the grace of God, and I was able to provide the income and help out. And we got by, and we were fine. And then at some point, there came a point in my life where I was getting kind of annoyed again to going back to church. So I had this whole 360 again, or this 180, I should say, where
I went away from church. I was drawn back to church. And then I was still feeling kind of empty. And I was kind of pulling myself out of it again. Now, when we were dealing with the church at that point in time, I was getting heavy in the rosary. I was getting heavy in doing that every single day. Same with the prayers, the Our Fathers, the Hail Marys. Those are the only two I really knew. So I was pretty good at those. And I would say the rosary every time before bed. Where now, instead of carrying the rocks, I would carry the case for the rosary everywhere. I would keep it in my pocket. I would hold it. I would take it with me. I would take it in my car. I would leave them in the car. I would leave them on my desk. I would just go through the beads throughout the day. I would be saying the prayers. I'd be visualizing it in my mind, saying those prayers as if I was saying them to Mary, as if I was saying them to the Father. If I was saying it in the perspective of Mary, I was saying it in the perspective of the Father. That's what I was visualizing when I was saying these prayers throughout all of them, because then you have to think about all your sins when you go through all, I think, 30 or so beads, maybe even more. I can't remember now. And when you're going through all of them, you literally are picturing that. So it was a challenge. It was like, okay, all my sins, like, okay, I'm this person, I'm that person. I'm like going through and I'm getting it complete. And I'm hitting each one of the mile markers on the rosary, and I'm feeling like this is it. This is good. This was one day though. This was one day where I am just, it's like morning or in the afternoon or something, and my wife came back from work, and it was the daytime. And this was just before we had our child. So this was when I was starting to ramp back up again. And I was doing the rosary, and she was sleeping next to me. Now we had skylights in that bedroom, and they were bright because the shades stopped working, and we were renting that place. We couldn't get them. We couldn't get the landlord to change them out. It took 8 months to change the skylights out. So we had to wear eye masks every night because it would just be so bright, because the sun would just hit it. It was beautiful when you wanted to see things, but it was horrible to sleep with. So we were always kind of tired because I could never sleep that well. And so it was the middle of the day. I want to say it was like 11 or so. And maybe even later than that, maybe the afternoon. And so my wife's sleeping on the top of the covers, and I'm going to rest next to her because we don't have our child just yet. She's still pregnant. And I'm going through the rosary at this point in time like crazy. And I fell asleep. I didn't finish it. I didn't finish the rosary. I just fell asleep. I was still holding it in my hand. And I woke up to my wife sitting up and staring at me with the most evil eyes I could ever imagine. They were dark and looked like, when you see a dog and they have hate in their eyes, or you see a dog and they want to bite you, and like you could just see how their eyes trying to change, and you just know that that's a dangerous dog. That's kind of how I felt, where I was looking at my wife and I couldn't recognize her eyes. And I was like, I asked her, I said, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing right now? Like, stop. What are you doing is what I said. And she didn't say a word. She didn't say a word. She didn't smile. She didn't do nothing. She just stared at me, pin straight, eyes wide. And I was freaked out. Honestly, I was kind of scared. It was the first time my wife's ever scared me. And like, almost this is kind of odd, kind of weird way, like as if I was sleeping and you were staring at me. Like, how long were you staring at me while I was sleeping, kind of deal. And then she just went back down, and she's done that since I've known her for years. She was doing that, and I just never had it to that effect where she was staring at me with such hate. And I was thinking at that time, wow, this rosary really stirred something up. Or I was holding this rosary, and then you looked at me like that, like, why? And so I would ask her about it, and she just wouldn't know. She would be like, I had no idea I did that. Like, she just had no recollection of it. Every time she had a sleep encounter, every time she was trying to get up, sometimes she would be going, she'd be walking to other rooms. I'd be getting her back, like, what are you doing? She's like, I don't even know. She didn't even know that it happened. I was saying to her, I had a whole conversation with you, and she was speaking back to me, and she would have no memory of it every single time. And it freaked me out sometimes. It really, really did. So now, with that backstory, my daughter is here. We're having a different home. And we're doing still the same things. We're going to Roman Catholicism. We're doing the full swings of the church. And the rosary's not doing it either for me. So now I went from New Age to now all of a sudden, the rocks. And that didn't work. So now I'm going to the rosary. And that's not really working. I'm not feeling anything from it. And I'm starting to put it down. I'm starting to take the rosary and I'm starting to put it down. And I'm starting to not use it. And my wife's using it because now she's all excited that I'm using it. And I'm not feeling any connection. I'm not feeling how I thought I would have felt. And so now I get frustrated. I get really frustrated, not only at myself, I start getting frustrated at everything that I'm doing here because I don't even know who I'm talking to. And so at this stage in my life, I start thinking that none of this is real. That everything that I'm doing here ain't it. Like this church is a waste of my time. And that I don't need to be here. I don't need to be doing this. What I need to be doing is, going out, starting businesses. I need to go out and into the world. I'm wasting my Sunday where I could be working. I'm wasting my hour or 2 hours or whatever because I could be doing other things. And so I start having almost this hate in my heart where now people are talking about God. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I would be having conversations with my wife and I'd be telling her, like, I don't even think God exists. And so now imagine her perspective. She's a Roman Catholic her whole life, so she believes in God.
And I told her I believed in God for so long, and then all of a sudden I'm hitting her with, I don't believe in God. And we have our kid, and now our ideologies aren't lining up anymore. And there's a lot of tension, a lot of frustration from that angle too. Rightly so. I mean, we were completely different people at that point. And I couldn't relate anymore. So now we're going through life. Our child is growing. She's now turning 1. And I have so much hate in my heart I have so much disdain, really, for going to church, for doing this. I mean, I'm just taking this wafer, I'm chewing it, I'm saying I'm not feeling anything. I'm not feeling a single thing. I'm like, what is this even? Is this even true? Like, why am I going? Do I need to be here? What can I do to stop going? And that was my thought. I was just thinking, I need to disprove that this God exists because I don't want to be doing this anymore. It's a waste of my time. And not only do we have to go to regular Mass, but sometimes we would be going to the long-standing Polish Mass, which is about an hour and 30 minutes. So all y'all that are in American Masses don't even know, because imagine going to a language you don't even know and staying there and going into a kneeling position for 45 minutes, saying the same, chants over and over again. It was mundane. I couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand going. I couldn't stand going through every holiday, going to that church and doing it for that hour and a half in a language I didn't even know. It ended up being, for me, very taxing because I wanted to believe and I gave it a chance, not only once, but twice. And nothing happened from it. And I was very frustrated to a point where I said that none of this matters. And so now nothing mattered and I could care less. And I came in with this hardened heart and I said, well, what is it that is left that I have not found? And so I started watching things on YouTube, as any natural curiosity person does. I watched a lot of things on YouTube. I always did. And I become more and more drawn to kind of the story of that there's a Bible and that there are Christians. And this is honestly, this is one of the first times I ever heard of the word Christian. Like, I didn't know there was something different. I thought Christian and Catholic were the same. I'm like, okay, it's the exact same thing. So if that's the exact same thing, then what am I missing out on? And so ultimately, I'm watching these videos. I'm watching some light sermons, just like real bare bones introduction to what a Christian is. And I'm getting a little curious because they're saying that it's different. And I'm like, how is it different? Ain't nothing different. And so this was a solid few months of me kind of like back and forth once in a while watching stuff, kind of piquing my interest, but kind of not. And then at one point, I get very curious. Being somebody who's a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, you kind of start dabbling into things. And needless to say, one of the biggest things that I couldn't grasp anymore was the aspect that the world is round. I was seeing a lot of things telling me opposite ways and telling me that we're not on this round ball going 66,600 miles per hour. And I was finding a lot of different things that was coming out, and, post-COVID, everybody was a truth seeker. Everybody and their mom's a truth seeker. Everybody's on QAnon. Everybody's doing all this crazy stuff. And so I was no different. I was doing all that. And at the same time, what I didn't realize was that people were saying, well, you should read the Bible. Read the Bible. Read the Bible. And I said, okay, like, let me try that. Like, what else am I going to lose? Like, if it's not true, it's not true. So I came in with the mindset that the Bible was actually wrong, and that actually I'm going to look into the Bible because I want to stop going to this church, because the Bible is tied into that church. So if I read the Bible and I find out it's all a bunch of BS, then I'm not have to go anymore. I tell the wife, and the wife isn't going to want to go anymore, and then I can stay at home on Sundays, and I'll be happy. That was literally my thought. Literally my thought. And so my first thought was, okay, how do I get a Bible? Like, do I have a Bible? And then I remembered I did have a Bible. And I was just thinking, like, okay, like, I never opened it. I never touched it. Never touched it. I just bring it to place, throw it in with all the books. And so I have this Bible, and I take it out. It was in my nightstand, like, how all the hotel rooms have them. That's how we did it. So I never opened one in my whole life. And I'm thinking this Bible has chants in it, incantations. Because I was deep into paranormal stuff. I was deep into spiritual stuff. I would buy books about Freemasons. I'd be buying books about occultic things. I had a demonology book. Like, I was very deep into that stuff. And I really was interested in it. And so I was like, okay, well, this Bible is just going to be literally exorcism stuff. It was just going to be a bunch of these chants saying, get out of here, or whatever it is in Latin. I really thought that. I really, truly thought that. So I was not expecting to actually be able to even read it. And if I was going to be able to read it, I thought it was going to be absolutely nothing. So I'm reading. I open the Bible. This Bible, mind you, has never been touched. And this Bible was a gift that was for me when I was a boy. My mom's friend. Shout out to my mom's friend. That Bible changed everything for me. That Bible was a gift when I turned one. That Bible was a gift to me. And my mom just gave it to me. That was the only Bible we ever had in the house. It was a gift to me when I was one, a boy. And this person, who I never met, had enough compassion and love to show me the truth before I even knew the truth. Boy, if that's not a miracle of God, I don't know what is it. Sometimes it gets a little bit on my heart thinking about that, because God truly is wonderful. But I digress. So I get this Bible, and I open it. I crack it open for the first time, and I'm reading Genesis. And I'm going through Genesis, and I'm reading about the firmament. I'm reading about the luminaries and the stars in the sky. I'm reading about God creating the waters beneath the waters. And I'm thinking to myself, that matches a flat earth. Honest. And that set me off to say, there's truth here. Because that was the first time that I was going to read something expecting one thing and actually receiving the same truth that I've been seeking the last maybe 2.5 years. And so I'm reading Genesis, talking about the man, Adam, the woman, Eve, going through the biblical account. And I'm feeling excited reading this. I thought it was going to snooze me to the bone, but it gave me the opposite effect. It gave me something to look forward to. So I'm reading the Bible and I'm connecting. I'm not understanding. I'm connecting the dots. I'm connecting the dots of what I've learned in conspiracy theory and putting it with the Bible. And now I'm finding some complete thoughts that I've never thought about in a long time. So now I'm reading the Bible. I'm reading it, and I start realizing that what people say I should read, because I was reading a bunch of comments and figuring out, like, where do I go? Well, people are saying that I should read Matthew. So here I am in this Bible trying to figure out, well, what's Matthew? Where's Matthew? Oh, New Testament. Okay. New Testament, Matthew. Got it. All right, I'll start reading Matthew. And people are saying, like, that's the words of Jesus. That's the words of Jesus. Okay. But, like, who's Jesus? And so, they're saying that Jesus is God. So I'm saying, okay, well, let's check it out. If this is God, I got to know what he's going to say. So I'm reading, and mind you, I had the red letter, so it was a little easier for me to understand and point who is who. And I'm reading Matthew, only Matthew, the book of Matthew. And I'm going through the chapters, and I'm seeing things like, if you look at a woman with lust, you've already committed adultery with her in your heart. And I'm like, whoa, wait, like, I do that all the time. All the time. I'm a guy. Who doesn't? Who doesn't look at a woman when they're walking by, or who doesn't look past, their girlfriend or whatever, and they're looking at a woman and they're thinking about them. And they're like, oh, well, what if I had both of them? Or what if I did X, Y, and Z with this person? I'm like, that's normal. Like, what are you talking about? Like, isn't that just how we're wired? And all of a sudden, I'm like, wait, I do that. And then we talk about the commandments and how through sin, we're going to go to hell. And that freaked me out. That freaked me out. So not only do I do these things, but you're telling me in this Bible that I'm going to go to hell. Now, I didn't even know hell was real, to be honest. I didn't realize that it was real. I just thought it was some man-made construct. So this is the first time I'm reading, and I'm having something, like I'm feeling a weight on me, where I start thinking, like, maybe this is real. Like, not even maybe, but what if it's real? Like, if this is true, I'm going to go to hell. I don't know what hell is, but all I know is that I'm going to be there, where my whole life in Roman Catholicism, we're told we're going to heaven. Everybody's just going to die and you go to heaven every single time. You go to heaven. You go to heaven. My wife would say opposite. We go to purgatory. But I didn't know that much. Honestly, I didn't even know who purgatory was. I just heard about it and I was like, yeah, I don't even know what that construct is. And so I'm reading the Bible for the first time. I'm getting the sin conviction, which is what I call it now. But back then I didn't know what it was. And I remember I said, I need to just listen to more Christian things. And so I start watching more sermons. I start to actually unpack a little bit more of it. I'm now also listening, first time in my life, to Christian music. Never heard of it before my whole life. I'm a I'm a rap guy, I'm a country guy, I'm a rock guy, I'm a heavy metal guy, I'm sometimes a pop guy. I'm all these things. I'm a grunge dude. I've been through all those phases as a kid. Never in my life have I ever listened to Christian music. I didn't even know Christian music was a thing. And so I put it on. I put it on. And I put it on and I listened for the first time. And I kid you not, I'm listening for maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, can't remember. And I'm crying. I've never cried ever. I don't cry. Never cried my whole life. I cried when I was a boy, but I wouldn't be crying as a man. I don't cry. Crying's weak. Crying's for girls. Crying's for the weak-hearted, for baby men. That's what I thought. And so I wouldn't cry, but I didn't actually cry like sob. I had tears rolling down my face to the point where I was like, what is going on? My eyes are watering and crying, but I'm not feeling upset. I didn't feel upset like I wanted to sob. I was just crying, which was the weirdest thing, especially as a guy, because I was like, what is going on right now? But I was feeling a connection to this song. And I can't remember the song now, but I was feeling a connection to it that I never felt before. And I started thinking about, how do I pray? If this, like, now I'm starting to see true signs of what I'm doing, maybe more than just reading. Maybe it's something real. And at that point, I started researching about how do you pray, because I really kind of wanted to figure out if what I was experiencing was real or if it was just a figment of my imagination, to be honest with you. And I realized, how to pray, which is speak to him. And so I was thinking to myself, I have to speak to him. The only way I knew how to pray was doing a chant of Hail Mary or an Our Father. And so at that point, I go on my knees. I look up to my ceiling and I pray. I say, Jesus, if you are real, show me. Or if not, I will stop doing this. But if you are real, I will serve you. That is what I said. And I kid you not, that instant, I felt this warmth come from the top of my head down to the soles of my feet. In this kneeling position with my hands up, my eyes were opened and I felt something. I felt this garment of peace over me. And I felt so good. So good. Best I've ever felt. I felt like I was on top of the world. I felt invincible. I felt whole. I felt loved. I truly felt love. When you embrace your parents after something horrible, when you embrace your children after something catastrophic, and that love that you feel, that rawness, that's what I felt. I felt that. I felt it. And that changed my life. That changed my life, my whole life. So much so that I ran down, I told my wife, I said, I just prayed and I felt something come over me. And I feel so good. And so, mind you, just before the Bible, and I'm trying my best to piece everything together. I don't have notes or anything. This is all from memory. Just before I opened the Bible, I was starting to get curious about angels and angel numbers. And so I was getting really heavy into it. And at one point I was driving home from my job, and I would see these angel numbers, and essentially on my car dash, I had this number 444. And then all of a sudden it stayed on there for about 10 minutes, and it never changed. It never changed. And I said, well, that's just freaky. And I went into the kitchen with my wife and I told her about it. And when I'm telling her about it, and I had these Roman Catholic friends come over and I told them about my experience. But before that, when I was sitting in my chair with my wife, I felt this hug over me. It was an interesting experience because I didn't know what that was. And looking back on it, it was almost like a trick of the enemy. But because it led me to a false sense of security with Roman Catholicism, because I never picked up the Bible until after. But that was a real experience for me. But that was a hug embrace. That was very, very different than what I experienced when the true Holy Spirit came down upon me. When I prayed to Jesus and I said, Jesus, reveal to me that you are real. And if not, I'm going to walk away. But if you are real, show me. And when I said those words and that peace came upon me, it was the most blissful experience I've ever had in my whole life. And then when I told my wife about it, I said, everything has changed. And so fast forward a little bit, I'm now feeling this peace, and it's staying. It's not like it just went away. It's there. Next morning, I'm feeling peaceful. And I was like, how am I feeling this right now? And it got to a point where the whole week, I was feeling so good. The whole week. And then I told my wife, I gave her the Bible. I handed it to her. I tossed it. I said, you need to read this. It's going to change your life. And so she did. She had nothing else to lose either. She knew it was something good. It was a religious instrument for her. So she started to read it. Her whole life is filled with Mary worship. Her whole life is filled with Roman Catholicism. So we're so deep and ingrained into that culture. And my wife, after 1 month of reading the Bible, says to me, I want to change churches. I want to go to a Christian church. 1 month later. That's the power of God. Because I thought in my heart that I will just continue to read the Bible and serve this God that I've experienced in secret, because I didn't think my wife would ever change. And lo and behold, 1 month later, she changes. She changes and she encounters what God's truly about. So that was the launching point of finding Christ, understanding who he is, and knowing that we are loved by him. So that was my first encounter with the Holy Spirit. That's 3 years, maybe a little north of 3 years now, that I've been saved. These last 3 years have been some of the most challenging years of my life, but some of the best years of my life, because I've been protected under the Lord Jesus Christ for these last 3 years. Our family has blossomed. My relationship with my wife has gotten stronger than ever. We're inseparable. Not only that, fights and arguments have fizzled out to nothing. We live in a biblical standard. Many doors have opened that I would never have dreamt of. Many things have happened, signs and wonders, if you will, that are only from him. I can talk for probably 3 hours about all the wonderful miracles he's done for my life, truly. After our firstborn, we were blessed with a secondborn. Okay. The secondborn that we had went through NICU for about 2 months, maybe a little north of that. And that whole time, that whole pregnancy, everything was just filled with peace. Filled with peace. And then when we went through that process, even with our firstborn, things changed for the better. Even though we went through a lot of hardships, things changed for the best. And not only that, the peace that we feel has never left us. It may come and go or wax and wane, but if you get right in the spirit, each and every time it comes back tenfold. And he's always been with us. And so ultimately, this is my story. It's my story. There's a lot more things that have transpired since then. And I'll give you a taste of it. We've went through witchcraft over our family. We went through witchcraft against us. We've lost a lot of friends. We've made enemies along the way. We've been delivered from demons. We've been radically changed and saved. We've been baptized. And now we walk in full faith and obedience in the Lord Jesus Christ for his coming return in power and judgment. And not only that, we've received many blessings from him. And that's only because of our walk of obedience. And so, if you're new here, if you're new to who I am, I started 2 channels. One channel is my own name, Kyle Loriano. That's going to be a reactionary channel. That's going to be a channel talking about biblical studies as well. We're going to go deeper into the spirit. We're just going to have more of a raw and real, authentic approach to it. And then my other channel is The King is Coming. It's a testimony show where I bring on anybody from any walk of life talking about their encounter with the living God and how they have changed their life based upon their encounter and how Jesus transformed them. And so this is the walk. This is what I do now. And the real calling is because in Acts 2:17, it talks about there'll be dreams and visions poured out upon all men. And there'll be dreams dreamed by old men and visions for women and all these things. And we're seeing that. Post-COVID, there's a revival. There's an awakening. Something's happening. I would have never been saved if God never pulled me out. I give all the credit to him. He is our guidepost. He is my Lord, my Savior, my Master. And he leads my life. I do not lead my own life. I give everything up to him. Everything is his. And that's why I'm here, giving my testimony. I wouldn't care less if I was doing this on my own. I wouldn't be talking to anybody. This would be my story, and I'd take it to the grave. But it doesn't matter, because what does matter is saving souls. We live in an age of deception. We truly, truly do. We live in the age of deception. A truly little season, if you will. But without further ado, I thank you for hearing my testimony all the way through. I thank you for your time. I look forward to the community. I'm looking forward to meeting other brothers and sisters in Christ. And if you're feeling blessed by this channel and my other channel, I'd love if you can like, subscribe, and share. I want my testimony to be heard by many people, not for my own personal gain, but to really save the souls. My background is a little unique. Being a Roman Catholic, turned New Age, turned atheist, back to Catholic, and then found the living God because he pulled me out of the mud. Everybody's got a unique story. This is just my story and how I want to tell it. With that being said, this is Kyle Loriano. Thanks for taking some time with me. I'm out.